Nothing says happy anniversary like finding your wife's panties in another man's gym bag. But that's exactly what greeted me at midnight when I decided to surprise Vanessa with her favorite Thai takeout from downtown. I'm Jake Morrison, and I've spent the last 15 years building Morrison Auto Sales from a 2-car lot into the biggest dealership in our Rust Belt city of Millfield. I work 16-hour days, drive a 10-year-old pickup, and sleep 4 hours a night so my wife can wear designer clothes and post Instagram photos of her blessed life. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The gym bag was sitting right there on our kitchen island, unzipped and practically screaming for attention. Blake's fitness center was embroidered on the side in gold letters. Inside, nestled between protein powder and sweaty workout clothes, were Vanessa's black lace panties, the expensive ones I'd bought her for Valentine's Day. My phone buzzed. A text from my loving wife. "Working late again. Don't wait up. XOXO. Working late." Right. I photographed everything, sent the images to my personal email, then calmly put the panties back exactly where I found them. 15 years of marriage, and this is what I get. My hands weren't even shaking. Maybe I'd been expecting this for months. The Thai food went into the fridge. I grabbed a beer and sat in my recliner, staring at the framed photo of our wedding day on the mantel. Vanessa looked radiant in her $1,000 dress. I looked like a guy who'd just won the lottery. Turns out the lottery ticket was counterfeit. My phone rang. Samantha, my assistant at the dealership. "Jake, I know it's late, but I just saw Vanessa's car at that new condo complex on Riverside Drive. Thought you should know." Samantha Chen had worked for me for 3 years. Sharp as a tack, loyal as a golden retriever, and apparently keeping better tabs on my wife than I was. "Which building?" I asked. "The fancy one with the doorman. Building C, 3rd floor. The lights are on." I thanked her and hung up. Then I grabbed my keys. The 20-minute drive to Riverside gave me plenty of time to think. Vanessa had been distant for months. Late nights at her marketing firm, weekend client meetings, new workout routine with a personal trainer named Blake. She'd lost 15 pounds and started wearing perfume to the grocery store. All the classic signs, and I'd ignored every single one. Building C was all glass and steel, the kind of place that charged $3,000 a month for a studio apartment. I parked across the street and looked up at the 3rd floor. Sure enough, Vanessa's white BMW was in the visitor parking, right next to a red Jeep Wrangler with Blake's fitness decals on the side. I didn't storm up there. I didn't pound on the door or make a scene. Instead, I sat in my truck and watched the silhouettes moving behind the curtains. 2 figures dancing close together in the soft glow of candlelight. My wife of 15 years was slow dancing with her personal trainer in his overpriced apartment, while I sat outside like a private investigator documenting adultery. The smart thing would have been to drive home, call a lawyer, and file for divorce. Clean, simple, civilized. But where's the fun in that? I walked over to Blake's Jeep and ran my house key along the driver's side, leaving a nice long scratch from headlight to taillight. Then I pulled out a business card from my wallet and wrote on the back, "Hope she's worth it. The husband." I slipped the card under his windshield wiper and drove home. Vanessa stumbled in at 2:30, reeking of wine and Blake's cologne. She mumbled something about a client dinner running late, then passed out on the couch, still wearing her clothes. I covered her with a blanket and went to bed alone. The next morning she was gone before I woke up. No note, no goodbye kiss, no acknowledgement that she'd come home drunk in the middle of the night. Just an empty coffee cup in the sink and the lingering scent of her perfume. My phone buzzed with a text. "Car got keyed last night. Some psycho in the neighborhood. Filing a police report." I texted back, "Sorry to hear that. Hope you find whoever did it." Then I deleted the message thread and headed to work. Morrison Auto Sales sits on a 5-acre lot on the south side of town, surrounded by chain restaurants and strip malls. We sell everything from economy cars to luxury SUVs, with a service department that keeps half the city's vehicles running. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills, and then some. Samantha was waiting in my office with coffee and a stack of paperwork. "How did it go last night?" she asked. "About as well as expected." She studied my face. "What's your next move?" "Haven't decided yet." That was a lie. I'd been planning my next move since I found those panties. But revenge is a dish best served cold, and I wanted mine frozen solid. 3 days later, Vanessa's best friend Janice called me at the dealership. "Jake, we need to talk." Janice Hoffman was the kind of woman who thrived on drama. 42 years old, divorced twice, with a social media following that hung on her every word about local gossip and lifestyle tips. She and Vanessa had been friends since college, bonding over their shared love of expensive things and other people's business. "What's on your mind, Janice?" "Meet me at Murphy's Bar tonight, 7 o'clock. Come alone." Murphy's was a dive bar downtown, the kind of place where construction workers drank away their paychecks and the jukebox only played songs from the 80s. Not exactly Janice's usual scene, but perfect for a private conversation. I arrived early and claimed a corner booth. Janice showed up 20 minutes late, wearing designer jeans and looking completely out of place among the blue-collar crowd. "Thanks for coming," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "What's this about?" She ordered a wine spritzer from the waitress, then leaned forward with her elbows on the table. "You need to let Vanessa go." I almost laughed. "Excuse me?" "She's not happy, Jake. She hasn't been happy for years. You work all the time, you never take her anywhere, and you've let yourself go physically. Blake makes her feel alive again." Blake makes her feel alive. I repeated the words slowly, letting them sink in. "That's interesting. How long have you known about Blake?" Janice's eyes flickered. "That's not the point." "Actually, it's exactly the point. How long have you been covering for my wife's affair?" "It's not an affair. It's, complicated." "Complicated." I took a long drink of my beer. "You know what's complicated?" 15 years of marriage, building a business from nothing, paying for her car, her clothes, her yoga classes, and her girls' trips to wine country. Blake sleeping with my wife in his apartment? That's pretty straightforward. Janice flinched at my language. Good. "You don't understand," she said. "Vanessa needs excitement. She needs passion. She needs someone who appreciates her for who she is." "And who is she exactly?" "Because the woman I married was supposed to be my partner, not some Instagram influencer looking for her next thrill." "Maybe that's the problem. Maybe you never really knew who she was." I studied Janice's face. There was something else going on here, something beyond friendship loyalty, the way she talked about Blake, the defensive tone in her voice when she mentioned him. "You've met him?" I said. "Blake? You've spent time with him?" "He's a good guy, Jake. He really cares about her." "I'm sure he does. Question is, does he care about you too?" Janice's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Just wondering how many women Blake is training these days. Seems like a popular guy." She set down her glass hard enough to slosh wine onto the table. "You're disgusting." "I'm disgusting? I'm not the one screwing around behind my spouse's back. Vanessa deserves better than you." "Maybe she does, but she's still my wife, and Blake is still trespassing on my marriage. That's going to stop." Janice leaned back in the booth, her expression shifting from defensive to calculating. "What are you going to do? Beat him up? You're 50 pounds overweight and 20 years older than him." "I'm 38, and I don't need to beat anyone up. I've got other tools." "Like what?" I smiled and finished my beer. "Like owning the dealership where Blake bought his Jeep. Funny thing about car loans, they come with all sorts of interesting clauses." Janice's face went pale. "You can't do that." "Can't do what? Enforce the terms of a legal contract? Call in a loan that's in default due to property damage. Blake's Jeep got vandalized the other night. Probably affects his insurance rates. You keyed his car. Can you prove that? She stared at me across the table, probably seeing me clearly for the first time in 15 years. Not the pushover husband who worked himself into the ground while his wife played around. Not the nice guy who always picked up the check and never made waves. Vanessa was right about you, she said finally. What did she say? That you're cold. That you care more about money than people. She's half right. I do care about money. Specifically my money, which has been paying for her lifestyle while she screws her personal trainer. That's about to change. I stood up and threw a 20 on the table. Tell Vanessa I said hello. And Janice? Next time you want to have a private conversation about my marriage, try calling my lawyer instead. I walked out of Murphy's feeling better than I had in months. The war was officially declared, and I was ready to fight. The next morning, I called the bank that held Blake's auto loan. As the dealer who'd originated the financing, I had certain rights regarding the vehicle, especially if it had been damaged or if the insurance situation had changed. Mr. Morrison, the loan officer said, we'll need to inspect the vehicle before we can approve any modifications to the loan terms. Of course, I'm sure Mr. Blake will be happy to bring it in. By noon, Blake had received a certified letter requiring him to present his Jeep for inspection within 5 business days or face immediate repossession. By evening, my phone was ringing off the hook. Jake, what the hell is wrong with you? Vanessa's voice was shrill with panic. Hello, sweetheart. How was your day? Don't play games with me. You can't repossess Blake's car just because you're jealous. I'm not repossessing anything. The bank is simply exercising its right to inspect a damaged vehicle. Standard procedure. This is harassment. This is business. Blake signed a contract. Contracts have terms. Terms have consequences. I can't believe you're being this petty. Petty? I laughed. Honey, I haven't even started being petty yet. The next few weeks were a masterclass in psychological warfare. I didn't yell, didn't threaten, didn't make dramatic gestures. Instead, I systematically dismantled the comfortable life Vanessa had taken for granted. First, I canceled her credit cards. All of them. The joint account cards, the store cards, even the gas card for her BMW. When she called to complain, I explained that I was reviewing our household expenses and would be happy to discuss a reasonable allowance once we sat down for a budget meeting. She never asked for the meeting. Next, I changed the locks on the house. Vanessa still lived there, of course, but now she had to ask me for the new key. A small thing, but it sent a clear message. This was my house, bought with my money, and she was there by my permission. The BMW was trickier. It was in both our names, but I'd made every payment for the past 3 years. I couldn't repossess it outright, but I could cancel the insurance and remove my financial responsibility for any damages or accidents. When Vanessa discovered she was driving without coverage, she had to scramble to find a new policy. Turns out insurance is expensive when you don't have a job or credit cards. Blake, meanwhile, was dealing with his own problems. The bank inspection had revealed several irregularities with his Jeep, the keyed paint job, some mysterious engine trouble that required expensive repairs, and questions about whether his insurance had properly covered the damages. I may have mentioned to a few people around town that Blake's fitness center was struggling financially. Word travels fast in a small city, especially when it comes from a respected businessman like myself. Samantha helped spread the rumors. She had friends at the gym who were happy to share gossip about Blake's money problems and unprofessional relationships with clients. By the end of the month, Blake had lost a dozen members and was behind on his rent. But Vanessa wasn't giving up. If anything, the pressure seemed to make her more determined to flaunt her relationship. She started bringing Blake to public places, restaurants, the movie theater, even the grocery store where half our neighbors shopped. She wanted everyone to see them together. She wanted to humiliate me. That was her first mistake. The second mistake was trusting Janice to keep her secrets. I'd been thinking about my conversation with Janice at Murphy's bar, something about her reaction when I mentioned Blake didn't sit right, the way she'd defended him so passionately, the way she'd seemed personally invested in his relationship with Vanessa. So I did a little digging. Blake's fitness center had security cameras in the parking lot, the kind that recorded 24 hours a day and stored footage for 60 days. As a local business owner with connections throughout the city, it wasn't hard to find someone willing to share a few files. What I found was interesting. Janice's car appeared in Blake's parking lot 3 times a week, always late at night, always after the gym was officially closed. The timestamps showed she was staying for 2 to 3 hours each visit. Either Janice was the most dedicated late-night fitness enthusiast in the city, or she was getting her own personal training sessions from Blake. I compiled the footage into a neat little video file and saved it to my phone. Then I waited for the right moment to use it. That moment came sooner than expected. Vanessa announced she was going out of town for a girls' weekend with Janice. They were driving to Chicago for shopping and spa treatments, staying at a fancy hotel downtown. "That sounds wonderful," I said. "You deserve a break." She seemed surprised by my supportive response. Maybe she'd expected me to object or demand she stay home. "Really? You don't mind?" "Of course not. Have fun with Janice, take lots of pictures." What I didn't tell her was that I'd already checked with the hotel. There was no reservation under either of their names. What I also didn't tell her was that I'd hired a private investigator to follow them. The PI's report arrived in my email on Saturday morning. Vanessa and Janice had driven to Chicago, all right. But instead of checking into a hotel, they'd gone straight to a trendy apartment building in Lincoln Park. Blake's apartment building. The photos showed all 3 of them entering together on Friday night. More photos showed Blake and Janice leaving together Saturday morning, holding hands and kissing in the parking garage. Vanessa had stayed in the apartment alone. I stared at the images on my computer screen, trying to process what I was seeing. My wife's affair was bad enough, but discovering that her best friend was also sleeping with Blake, and that all 3 of them were apparently comfortable with this arrangement, was a whole different level of betrayal. My phone rang. Vanessa, calling from Chicago. "Hi, honey. Just wanted to let you know we made it safely. The hotel is gorgeous." "That's great. What are you and Janice up to today?" "Oh, shopping on Michigan Avenue. Maybe catch a show tonight. Girl stuff." "Sounds fun. Tell Janice I said hello." "I will. Love you." "Love you too." I hung up and immediately forwarded the PI's photos to my lawyer, my accountant, and my own personal email account. Then I started planning the next phase of my revenge. If Vanessa wanted to play games, I was about to show her what a real game looked like. Monday morning brought a surprise visitor to the dealership. Blake himself, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. "Mr. Morrison, I was hoping we could talk." I looked up from my desk, where I'd been reviewing sales reports. Blake was bigger than I'd expected, maybe 6'2", with the kind of sculpted physique that came from spending 8 hours a day in a gym. He was also younger than I'd thought, probably closer to 28 than 30. "Blake, what can I do for you?" "It's about my Jeep and other things." "Have a seat." He sat down across from my desk, his hands fidgeting with a baseball cap. Up close, I could see why Vanessa found him attractive. Square jaw, perfect teeth, the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about paying bills or supporting a family. "Look," he said, "I know this is awkward, but I think we need to clear the air." "I'm listening." "Vanessa and we didn't plan for this to happen. It just did. But we're serious about each other, and I think it's time everyone acted like adults." I leaned back in my chair. Adults. Interesting choice of words. "What I mean is, maybe we can work out some kind of arrangement, so nobody gets hurt unnecessarily." "What kind of arrangement did you have in mind?" Blake shifted in his seat. "Well, Vanessa mentioned that you've been making things difficult. The credit cards, the insurance, the thing with my car loan. I get it. You're angry. But taking it out on her financially isn't going to change anything. You're right. It's not going to change the fact that my wife is cheating on me. But it might change how comfortable she is while she's doing it. That's not fair to her. Fair? I laughed. You want to talk about fair? Let me tell you what's fair, Blake. Fair is 15 years of marriage. Fair is building a business so your wife can live comfortably. Fair is being honest with the person you promised to love and honor. People change, Mr. Morrison. Sometimes relationships run their course. You're absolutely right. Sometimes they do. But here's the thing about relationships. They involve more than just feelings. There are legal obligations, financial responsibilities, social consequences. You can't just walk away from 15 years because you met a personal trainer with nice abs. Blake's jaw tightened. Is that what you think this is about? I think this is about a bored housewife having a midlife crisis and a young guy who doesn't understand the difference between lust and love. You don't know anything about what Vanessa and I have. I know you're also sleeping with her best friend. The words hit Blake like a physical blow. His face went white, then red, then white again. I don't know what you're talking about. I turned my computer monitor around so he could see the photos from Chicago. Blake and Janice kissing in the parking garage. Blake and Janice entering his apartment building together. Blake and Janice having breakfast at a sidewalk cafe while my wife sat alone in his apartment. These were taken Saturday morning, while Vanessa thought you were out getting coffee. Blake stared at the screen for a long moment. When he finally looked up, the cocky confidence was gone. It's not what you think. Really? What is it then? Janice and I, we have history. We knew each other before Vanessa and I started seeing each other. How much history? We dated for a few months last year. Before I met Vanessa, when Janice introduced us, we thought it would be better to keep our past relationship quiet. But you're still seeing her. It's complicated. There's that word again. Complicated. I stood up and walked around the desk to where Blake was sitting. Let me simplify it for you. You're sleeping with my wife and her best friend at the same time. That's not complicated. That's just greedy. Blake stood up too, his hands clenched into fists. For a moment, I thought he might actually take a swing at me. You don't understand the situation. I understand it perfectly. You're a player who got in over his head. Now you're trying to juggle two women who happen to be best friends, and you're hoping I'll just quietly disappear, so you don't have to choose between them. That's not true, isn't it? Tell me, Blake. Does Vanessa know about your weekend in Chicago with Janice? Does she know you've been seeing Janice 3 nights a week at your gym? His silence was answer enough. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to walk out of here and decide which one you want, my wife or her best friend. Because this little love triangle you've got going is about to explode, and when it does, I want to make sure everyone in town knows exactly what kind of man you are. You can't threaten me. I'm not threatening you. I'm promising you. By the end of this week, either Vanessa knows about Janice, or Janice knows about the extent of your relationship with Vanessa. Your choice. Blake grabbed his baseball cap and headed for the door. You're making a mistake, Morrison. The only mistake I made was trusting my wife. But I'm about to fix that. After he left, I sat back down at my desk and called Samantha into my office. How did that look from the outside? I asked. Like a young punk trying to intimidate his elder and getting schooled instead. The whole sales floor was watching through the window. Good. Make sure word gets around that Blake came here begging for a truce. Already on it. What's your next move? I looked at the photos still displayed on my computer screen. Blake and Janice, caught in their own web of deception. Time to let the ladies know what their boyfriend has been up to. I chose Murphy's Bar for the final confrontation, the same place where Janice had tried to convince me to let Vanessa go. Poetic justice has always appealed to me. I sent identical text messages to both women. We need to talk. All of us. Murphy's Bar, Thursday night, 8 p.m. Come alone. Vanessa arrived first, looking nervous and overdressed in a cocktail dress that probably cost more than most people made in a week. She'd clearly expected this to be some kind of romantic reconciliation dinner. "Jake, what's this about?" "Have a seat, we're waiting for someone." Janice walked in 10 minutes later, spotted us in the corner booth, and froze. She looked like she was considering turning around and walking back out. "Janice!" I called out, loud enough for half the bar to hear. "Over here!" She had no choice but to join us. The booth was designed for 4 people, but with the tension crackling between the 3 of us, it felt cramped. "What's going on?" Vanessa asked, looking back and forth between Janice and me. I thought it was time the 3 of us had an honest conversation about Blake. Both women went rigid. "Jake," Janice said carefully, "I don't think this is appropriate." "Really?" "Because I think it's long overdue." I pulled out my phone and set it on the table. "I've learned some interesting things about our friend Blake over the past few weeks." "What kind of things?" Vanessa's voice was barely above a whisper. Instead of answering, I opened the photo gallery on my phone and turned the screen toward them. The first image showed Blake and Janice kissing in the parking garage in Chicago. Vanessa stared at the photo like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "I don't understand. When was this taken?" "Saturday morning, while you were having your girls' weekend." The next photo showed Blake and Janice entering his apartment building together, holding hands. "Janice?" Vanessa's voice cracked. "What is this?" Janice opened her mouth, then closed it again. She looked like a fish gasping for air. "This is your best friend," I said to Vanessa, "having an affair with your boyfriend." "That's not—" "We weren't—" Janice stammered. "You weren't what? You weren't sleeping together? You weren't meeting at his gym 3 nights a week after hours? You weren't spending the weekend in his apartment while Vanessa sat there alone?" I swiped to the next photo, security camera footage of Janice's car in Blake's parking lot, time-stamped 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night. This was taken 3 weeks ago, and this one. Another photo. 2 weeks ago, and this one last week. Vanessa was staring at Janice with a look of pure betrayal. "How long?" "Vanessa, I can explain. How long have you been sleeping with Blake?" The entire bar had gone quiet. Even the jukebox seemed to pause between songs, waiting for Janice's answer. "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what she thinks," I said. "Blake told me himself. You 2 were dating before he met Vanessa. But instead of ending it when he started seeing your best friend, you decided to share him." "That's not true." Janice's voice was shrill with panic. "Really? Then explain these photos. Explain why you encouraged Vanessa to have an affair with a man you were already sleeping with. Explain why you told me I should let my wife go so she could be with Blake, when you had no intention of giving him up yourself." Vanessa stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I need some air." She walked toward the door, leaving Janice and me alone at the table. "You bastard!" Janice hissed. "You've ruined everything." "I didn't ruin anything. You and Blake did that all by yourselves. I just documented it." "Vanessa will never forgive you for this." "Maybe not. But she'll never forgive you either. And that's what really matters, isn't it? You've lost your best friend, you've lost your boyfriend, and by tomorrow morning, everyone in town will know exactly what kind of person you are." I stood up and threw a $50 bill on the table. "Drinks are on me. You're going to need them." I found Vanessa in the parking lot, leaning against her BMW and crying. Her mascara had run, leaving dark streaks down her cheeks. "How could she do this to me?" she asked. "The same way you could do it to me, I suppose. People justify all kinds of behavior when they want something badly enough." She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "I never meant for this to happen." "Which part? The affair or getting caught?" "Any of it. I felt invisible, Jake, like I didn't matter to you anymore. So you decided to matter to someone else. It wasn't supposed to be serious. Blake was he made me feel young again, attractive, wanted. And now? She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Now I don't know what he was. Real, fake, just using me to get to Janice. I don't know anything anymore. We stood there in the parking lot for a long moment, 15 years of marriage hanging in the balance. What happens now? She asked finally. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, for the first time in months. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with in college. But she was also a stranger, someone who'd been living a double life while I worked myself into the ground, trying to make her happy. Now you decide what you want, I said. But you decide with all the facts. Blake's been playing both you and Janice. Janice has been manipulating you to cover her own affair, and I've been documenting everything for the past month. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself. There's a difference. Vanessa got into her car without another word. I watched her drive away, then went back into Murphy's to close out my tab. Janice was gone. The bartender said she'd left through the back door right after I went outside. I drove home to an empty house and poured myself a drink. Tomorrow, the whole town would be talking about the drama at Murphy's bar. By the weekend, Blake would probably be looking for a new place to live and a new business to run. And Vanessa? Vanessa would have to decide whether 15 years of marriage was worth fighting for, or if she'd rather start over with nothing but her pride and a broken heart. Either way, I'd finally stopped being the fool who paid for his own humiliation. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. You think you've won, but this isn't over. B. I typed back. It's been over since the day you touched my wife. You're just now finding out. Then I blocked the number, finished my drink, and went to bed. For the first time in months, I slept like a baby. The next morning brought news that Blake's fitness center had been vandalized overnight. Someone had thrown a brick through the front window and spray-painted "cheater" across the door in bright red letters. I had nothing to do with it, of course. But in a small town like Millfield, word travels fast, and apparently a lot of people had heard about the confrontation at Murphy's bar. Blake called the police, but there were no witnesses and no security cameras in that part of town. The investigating officer took a report and promised to look into it, but everyone knew nothing would come of it. By noon, Blake had closed the gym and put a "for rent" sign in the window. By evening, he was gone. Vanessa came home that night with 2 suitcases and a lawyer's business card. I filed for divorce, she said, standing in our living room like a stranger. I figured you would. I'm moving in with my sister in Cleveland until we can work out the details. That's probably for the best. She looked around the house we'd shared for 10 years, her eyes lingering on the wedding photos and vacation souvenirs that told the story of our life together. I'm sorry, Jake, for all of it. I know. Do you think we could have fixed this? If things had been different? I considered the question seriously. Could we have saved our marriage if she'd come to me instead of going to Blake? If she'd told me she was unhappy instead of having an affair? If Janice hadn't been manipulating the situation for her own benefit? Maybe, I said finally, but we'll never know now. She nodded and picked up her suitcases. My lawyer will be in touch about the settlement. Vanessa? She stopped at the door. For what it's worth, you deserved better than Blake. You deserved better than Janice, too. Did I deserve better than you? I thought about that question for a long time after she left. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Vanessa got half of our savings and a modest alimony payment. I kept the house, the business, and my self-respect. Blake never reopened his gym. Word around town was that he'd moved to Florida and was working at a chain fitness center, just another employee instead of the big shot he'd pretended to be in Millfield. Janice tried to salvage her reputation by claiming she'd been trying to help Vanessa by investigating Blake's character. Nobody believed her. She moved away 3 months after the confrontation at Murphy's bar, and I heard she was selling real estate in Columbus now. As for me, business was better than ever. Turns out people respect a man who stands up for himself, even if his methods are a little unconventional. I hired 2 new salespeople, expanded the service department, and started taking weekends off for the first time in 15 years. I also started dating again. Nothing serious, just dinner and movies with women who appreciated honesty and weren't looking for someone to finance their lifestyle fantasies. Life was good, different, but good. And every time I drove past the empty building that used to house Blake's fitness center, I smiled and remembered the look on his face when I showed him those photos. Some lessons are worth learning the hard way.